So what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Questex coming back at you with a boxing video. This is going to be a shout out to my brother Blue Blood Sports TV, LDBC. We are taking over. We are the new media. We are the new voice of boxing. And, I want to talk about, go further in depth. I was on the Smoke City Mobcast. I wasn't on it, but I definitely watched a majority of it. I kept trying to sign in, but I had a little technical difficulties on my end, but I will get that all squared away. I want to talk about the overall premise of last night's episode, and I want to talk about how Blue Blood Sports TV was treated disrespectfully, unprofessionally, and I want to talk about a lot of points that I heard on the Smoke City Mobcast and why I feel like a lot of these guys hit the nail on the head. They always do. I'm not shocked at that. So, Blue Bloods goes into this event seeking to be a journalist, seeking to do what it is. A journalist's job is to ask the questions, the tough questions, to get the answers for the people who follow certain individuals in the spotlight. He does this, and just the overall behavior of the fake UK champion and how he conducted himself and his con job of a promoter and how he maneuvered. I'm going to sit here and say something too. I didn't like something that I watched when I watched this press conference. I'm going to be honest with you. Boo Boy Andrade, he was just acting a fool, jumping around and hopping all around and acting like a little kid. I just like the way Boo Boo carried himself during this whole situation. I don't know if I might have missed it on the Smoke City Mobcast, and maybe other people brought it up, but I just didn't like how Boo Boo conducted himself. Everybody else was composed, professional. Even with the fiasco that happened with Big Baby Miller and the fake UK champion, Povetkin was poised like he'd been there before. Even the dudes who I didn't even know who these guys are as fighters, they were composed. But you had Boo Boo sitting up there hopping from one end of the stage to the other end of the stage, jumping all around, acting like he couldn't stand there and act like he had some common sense. And that I'm not going to lie to you, to me, I know I may be nitpicking here, but to me, as somebody who has worked where you had to be professional and how you conduct yourself is a staple of your product, what you put out. To me, I didn't like that. I have to see more Boo Boo because, to be honest with you, who sees anything of Boo Boo? Okay? You can't find this dude. Hopefully now him being signed to something, he's clearly happy about being on the plantation Hearn. So, I just didn't like his whole performance, especially when I saw in one of the videos that was shot by these phony journalists, right? Because, see, they tried to treat my man Blue Blood Sports TV as if he wasn't a real journalist. No, you phony journalists who sat there and made phony headlines attacking us in the LDBC, attacking Blue Blood Sports TV, but then you congratulate him when the cameras ain't around, showing you the falsehood of your narrative. But I'll get to that later on down the road. But let's focus on what my situation is here. I just didn't like the way he conducted himself. And I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but I definitely did notice that. And I was just like, dude, act like you've been here before. Act like you got some common sense. This is something that my parents used to tell me all the time. Act like you've been here before. All right? Show like you got some common sense. But that's neither here nor there. That's over with. Now, let's go to the disrespect that was treated, or that was levied against Blue Blood Sports TV and how he was treated. In so many ways, I think it's a good thing it happened because, and it's not and by that, I want people to understand, I say that because it's a good thing it happened because it shows and it highlights from somebody who is a credible source, who talks to Deontay Wilder, who has who does real journalism exposes how it really is. It is a integrity is out the window with a lot of these so-called channels on YouTube who make these false headlines, and you go and you watch the video and you're like, well, that didn't happen, and you visually are watching it for your own with your own eyes. I think it's just it highlights also the state of boxing and why it's in the state it's in. Okay, it shows you that these guys are a part of the problem, not a part of the solution, not a part of what will elevate boxing. They're a part of, they're like bottom feeders, and they're just waiting for the scraps to hit the bottom of the ocean so that they can eat. And they're like parasites. They attach themselves to people who are actually doing work and grinding. And there are a lot of credible sports networks out there that cover this sport. And these dudes are the freaking bottom feeders. And not only that, on top of that, it's like the old tale of the scorpion and the frog. They will latch themselves on top of you for a ride and then stab you. And it's just their nature. It's just who they are. It's just who they are. And at the end of the day, I think it's a great thing that it happened. I think it's a great thing that it was put right in front of people's face so that people can see just what these people are. They're sycophants. They do not have a backbone to stand on. Their integrity was out the window the moment they signed on the dotted line and took cash. Because that's really what it comes down to. A lot of these guys are in the pockets of these promoters. I mean, how else could you explain what was done to 78 Sports TV with him trying to apply for credentials to cover a Golden Boy event? You talk too much about a certain other fighter. What? That's what journalists are supposed to do. They're supposed to cover the entire aspect of the sport, not just a part of the sport. But again, this is what you get. This is what you have right in front of you. Just the overall, how disrespectful they were to Blue Bloods just shows you and highlights, again, what I'll say. There has been, for a very long time in the sport of boxing, I believe the brother Santi Walden said it last night, a good old boys club in the sport. And this good old boys club has been allowed to operate in the shadows because, again, up until the LDBC, was any of this being highlighted? Did you have the Steve Kims of the world start feeling so physically threatened that we are exposing the bullshit that he had to come out on a public Twitter rant against us? No, because it had been allowed to operate in the shadows, in the dark, with only a few voices. But because the LDBC has grown so exponentially, and that we have members all across the world, now it can't be denied. It's one of those things. It's like there was a thing, I think I read it in an article where someone said, I think this past week, where they said that racism isn't getting worse. It's just getting recorded. And that's so true. This isn't something that's new. It's just now being brought to the forefront because of the LDBC. And then you got guys who are trying to sow the seeds of deception. We have like our resident stalker, right? Who's trying to sow the seeds of deception, okay? You have and he's right alongside a lot of these other channels out there who try to sit there and they try to manipulate how they send their message and when they send their message, and all this hoopla and BS, right? Like, oh, we just stumbled across your videos, we just stumbled across the LDBC's content. No, you don't. You actively look out and seek our videos, you actively seek our content, you actively seek our brand, and you hell-bent on trying to attack it and stop the movement, but it has not worked. In fact, it has adversely worked when it comes to your agenda, because all you've done is made it and highlighted how much better we are for the sport. And you can laugh and you can say whatever you want to say about it, but the proof is in the numbers, okay? What does Floyd always say? People lie, but numbers don't. The numbers don't lie, baby. We're growing every day. Every day. So, if this negative narrative that you say that we push, right? This anti-LDBC media, that if this negative narrative that you're saying that we push is so negative, don't you think it would have stopped by now, or been quelled, or have the momentum would have slowed? No. And then you have your fake UK champion who literally exposes himself on US soil. And this also shows you why he snuck in here a few months ago and did his little fake press tour, and then he scurried on back to the US. To across the pond. Okay, when he did his little phony interview with Stephen A. Snitch, who don't know a damn about boxing. Okay, and then let's go on to the interviews when it comes to this UK boxing champion, or this fake UK boxing champion. You know how you want to know if you have a real journalist? When they're asking questions structured around a story that people legitimately want to know and talk about. Something that is actually going on, that will actually move along a particular situation. Do you know what I saw in the videos by these fake journalistic news channels on YouTube? I heard some of the most disgusting things. Oh, I heard you could bench like 400, but you see Joshua, his arms, and look how big he is. He is nothing more, and that shows you that I'll be honest with you. Shows underlining homosexual tendencies. That's A. Okay, because every one of the interviews usually is centered around his body or how fit he is, and unless you understand the history and you know how it works here in America, when you see things like this or you hear things like this, it's very hard not to go back to the time of slavery, when male slaves who were considered the strong and the powerful, how they were put up and auctioned and looked at as property. And look how big and strong he is. Look at his teeth. Look at this. Look at that. And unless you are a learned person and you've read things and read books, you don't know about the sexual deviancy that went on with those slave masters when it pertained to slaves. Okay, and it's the same exact narrative. It is the same thing. It's just refined. And you'll have those like our resident stalker who will try to twist it and say, "See, my mind doesn't go to that, but that's where your mind goes." And you guys focus on that. We don't focus on that. When we clearly show you examples of it, we clearly show you that who your fake UK boxing champion, what he represents to the I want to say the good old boys club. He is a buck. He is somebody who will never ever make waves. He will never challenge the status quo. And this is exactly why he is considered a acceptable heavyweight champion. He's acceptable. He is somebody who's good enough to let in the door, but he'll never quite be a part of the club. And if you notice, the tenor and tone of a lot of these media so-called journalists, they treat him as such. Okay? They treat him as if he's acceptable. He's a good boy. He will never step out of line. He will never say the wrong things. let me tell you something. Apparently, the fake UK champion, and I say that, and I hope it does piss off a lot of the people who support him. So apparently, the fake UK champion grew up like many of us in the US grew up, or not many, but a majority of us have grown up from poverty, and we've elevated ourselves, right? Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I question a lot of this so-called heavyweight champion's his history, A, and B, his story. I'm gonna be honest with you. I do. I question a lot because we've seen this often. And unless you haven't been paying attention, manufactured stories have always happened in the sport of boxing. Quite frankly, somebody who's never been truly outed, but I can tell you that I know from what people have told me. Victor Ortiz, remember cheating Victor Ortiz? Okay, the guy who cheats, who quits on his opponents, the guy who starts these beefs with people and says some of the most weird things. He cheats his fans out of watching him succeed. Victor Ortiz's whole backstory, I've been told, was a lie, was fabricated. That's one of the major reasons why people don't deal with Victor Ortiz. They don't like Victor Ortiz. The Victor Ortiz manufactured a majority of it. Remember how HBO always used to sit there and always, oh, well, he used to sell stolen cigarettes, or he used to live outside of his car and then he became a boxer. He used to do this, he used to do that. Manufactured storylines in boxing have always been a thing of the sport, okay? And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't trust your fake champion's storyline that he was this hard, rough-tugged guy and he was sticking people up when he was young and he was this and that, because he sure don't move like it, he sure don't act like it, he sure don't. And I know some people will say, oh, well, you can grow. Look, you just sat there and said most of us have elevated ourselves from poverty to what we have now. But there is still a certain thing, an aspect, a certain a thing you never lose. And the only people who are going to understand this are people who are like myself, who grew up like the situation that I'm talking about. You never lose you never lose a certain awareness that you have to have, especially when it comes to your survival. And the fake champion, I'm going to be honest with you, like Bloods has said on several occasions, he seems autistic. He seems like he's just, yeah, whatever you want, boss. Yeah, whatever. It's like he's been trained since he was a young man to think and do this way. I don't know anybody who has grown up the way that he supposedly clearly grew up, right? Like, this is the story about him, that thinks like that. He should have some sort of confidence about himself. He should have something. If you survived what he clearly supposedly survived, he should have a confidence about himself that nobody can take from him. Okay? And he doesn't seem to show that. He absolutely, unequivocally does not show that at all. Give you an example. My resident stalker likes to sit there and say, oh, well, you sound like you grew up in suburbia. You sound like you grew up in, around a bunch of white people. That's racist right there within itself. And then he'll claim that, we're racist. But no, that means that growing up where I grew up, my mother, my father made sure that I always had a book in my fucking face. And that even though I had to, when I stepped outside my house, it was a fight to make sure things that I could just do what every other normal kid could do, right? That you see on TV, right? I go to school, have an education, have friends, but that I was aware of my surroundings. I was aware of what my situation was. And they made sure that I kept my nose in my books. And they made sure that I went to college, and they made sure that I did what I needed to do. But that doesn't mean I forget about the struggle and the grind. That don't mean I forget about my homeboys that I grew up with. That don't mean I forget where I came from. And it does influence how you carry yourself. It influences how you grow up, and where you grow up influences how you carry yourself. To me, the fake UK champion does not carry himself that way.